Welcome to the next part of our lecture on the autonomic nervous system. In this part, we are going to identify the four cranial nerves that are part of the autonomic nervous system and their function, and identify the spinal nerves that are part of it. And you'll tell me where the parasympathetic nervous system exits as well. So, the parasympathetic nervous system is called the craniosacral division. That's because it leaves by four cranial nerves. We have the oculomotor nerve going to the muscles of the eye. We have the facial nerve going to the four small salivary glands and to the lacrimal gland. We have the glossopharyngeal going to the larger salivary glands. Then my favorite cranial nerve, the vagus, going to all of the internal organs. And remember what I said in the previous lecture, if you have to guess a cranial nerve and it's going to abdominal organs, it's the vagus. Now, so cranial is cranial nerve, sacrum is sacral nerves. S2 to S4 is where the parasympathetic nervous system also leaves. And we're not going to go that much into structure because it actually is a little bit variable. Now again, I'm going to flip a magic quarter. If it comes at heads, I'm going to ask you what the sympathetic nervous system is called, thoracolumbar. If it's tails, I'm asking you the other name for the parasympathetic, craniosacral. Since this is called the craniosacral division, the nuclei are found in either the brainstem for the cranial nerves or in the lateral horn for the sacral nerves. Now, the four nuclei for the parasympathetic nervous system that leave the brainstem are the nuclei for the ocular motor nerve, There it goes. And its ganglia is near the eyeball because it goes to the muscles of the ciliary body, which we'll talk about in the next chapter, and the pupil causes constriction. The facial nerve, you actually have a couple nuclei from that. One of them goes to the lacrimal glands. So the ganglia is near the lacrimal gland, which causes you to wash your eyeballs. It's the tear duct gland. The other branch goes to the two smaller salivary glands underneath the tongue, so its ganglia is underneath the tongue. The glossopharyngeal is actually boring. Its ganglia goes near the larger salivary glands. Those are the parotid glands. And then we have the vagus. It goes all the way down to your abdominal organs. Now, the sacral division, we're going to leave from our lateral horn again, and that's going to go to this root. What's this root called? Correct, anterior root. Then we are going to go to the anterior rami, and it's going to go and branch. Now, the nerve's going to branch, and you're going to go to this plexus in the pelvic region. We're not going to go into detail about that. So, because the parasympathetic nervous system has ganglia near the target organs, the preganglionic axon is very long. We'll take the vagus because it's my favorite. Here are the nuclei in the brainstem, and very, very, very long preganglionic axons. Then we have our ganglia. Remember, the preganglionic axon is always going to be myelinated as well. Now, the ganglia are always found near the target organ. Remember, the sympathetic nervous system, you have the sympathetic chain right next to the spinal cord, sort of like that. Well, these ganglia are actually a long way away. Again, remember the vagus leaves the brainstem, has to go all the way to the thoracic cavity to ganglia near the liver and the kidney and the upper part of the intestines. So the ganglia is always near the target organ. So here, the one coming from the sacral nerves, that one is going all the way to the male or female reproductive organs. So the functions of these cranial nerves is fair game for the lecture exam. There's only four of them. The oculomotor nerve, in addition to letting you roll your eyes at your parents, it is going to go to your iris and constrict your iris. It also goes to this muscle called the ciliary body, which we'll learn about next class. The facial nerve goes to the lacrimal glands, and it increases lacrimal secretion, which is tears. It helps lubricate your eyes. Now it goes to the 4 smaller salivary glands. This always bugs me because they're actually underneath your tongue. So the ganglia is under your tongue. The glossopharyngeal is very boring. It goes to your larger parotid glands, which are on the side of your mandibular ramus, almost by your ear. And needless to say, salivary secretions are a parasympathetic response. Then the vagus. It goes to all of our viscera, the heart, the lungs, the liver, the pancreas, the upper part of the small and large intestines. So it influences digestive processes, decreases heart rate, decreases airway diameter. Now the sacral, again, this plexus is not the same for everybody, so we're not going to worry about it. The cell bodies are in the lateral gray matter of S2 to S4, and it goes out anterior root, anterior rami. It goes to part of your large intestines, your rectum and internal anal sphincter, reproductive organs, urinary bladder, and ureter. So, the hypothalamus controls most of the autonomic nervous system. It's the boss. It has links to the limbic system and the cerebral cortex, which is higher level, and it overrides the reticular formation and the brainstem. So the hypothalamus is the boss. Now, it controls most autonomic functions. It controls thirst. It controls hunger. It makes 5,000 million hormones that control the endocrine system. It's really not that many hormones. And it sends information down to the reticular formation. It sends it down to the nuclei in the brainstem. Now it's getting input from the mammillary body, from the limbic system, and it's also getting input from the cortex. So those can override the brainstem. The brainstem controls things. The hypothalamus, right there, sends signals down here and says, let's breathe a little faster, we're not getting enough oxygen, or let's breathe a little slower. So the hypothalamus controls those nuclei, which then sends signals to the nerves, mainly the vagus. So the brainstem's going to control blood pressure, respiration, heart rate. Wait, didn't I mention that in the brainstem lecture? I think I did. Now the cortex, it can modulate it. Strong memories can increase heart rate. A psychological drive for food can increase hunger. People can manually slow their breathing rate. So the limbic system and the upper areas of the cortex can override these things somewhat, but not completely. In summary, we have the SNS, sympathetic nervous system, and peripheral nervous system. They're at war. The sympathetic nervous system wants to speed the heart rate, parasympathetic wants to slow it. If the sympathetic nervous system wants to increase the diameter of bronchi and bronchioles, parasympathetic wants to decrease it. Now the sympathetic nervous system leaves T1 through L2, where the parasympathetic nervous system leaves 4 cranial nerves plus S2 to S4. Remember what those nerves are? Oculomotor, facial, glossopharyngeal, and vagus. Now, the presynaptic axon is going to be short in the sympathetic nervous system. Where in the parasympathetic nervous system, remember my vagus, it is going to be long. And they're both myelinated. So there's my myelin, there's my myelin. So, the ganglia is near the spine, and the ganglia is near the target organ. Because the ganglia is near the target organ, the postganglionic axons of the parasympathetic nervous system are short. Whereas, because this is near the spine, the postsynaptic ganglia, axons, are very, very long. So I expect you to know this breakdown for the lecture exam. And for students going into physiology, I would expect that they've had this in anatomy so far. Thank you.